What's going on, everybody? It's your host, Moose. It's kickoff weekend for the XFL. We're here for your latest Vipers news and XFL news. As we always do, before we get to it, let's hit that intro. Alright, everybody, it's your host, Moose. Going solo tonight. Emrod not being able to make it for our week 1 preview episode 3 of the Viper's Nest. Welcome. Hopefully he'll join us for the analysis of game 1 for the Vipers later on next week. Emrod buying a new house, so he's dealing with house stuff, furniture, all that fun stuff that we get to do when you buy a new house. So good luck, Emrod. We hope to have you back next week for the recap show, our first recap show with the Viper's Nest. But anywho, welcome to the Viper's Nest, episode 3. Got a lot to talk about today. We're recording Saturday night after day 1 of XFL operations. We're not going to go too in-depth because I think we want to leave that for the recap show, kind of recapping all of week 1, as well as, of course, an in-depth recap of the Guardians-Vipers game. But today we really want to... There's a little bit of XFL news to share, and mostly want to give a 30,000-foot view of what my impressions were watching about a game and change. I wasn't able to catch most of the Defenders game and the Dragons game earlier. I was able to see bits and pieces here and there, but I was able to catch most of the Roughnecks and Wildcats game, and I want to go over some general impressions on that. Promise you some XFL West division or conference, I'm not sure what they're calling it, XFL West depth chart news and analysis. Speaking of analysis, you got some data and analysis heading into the XFL. It looks like when it, at least in terms of conversion for your 1, 2, or 3 point conversion, as well as when to punt, go for a field goal, or the ever popular go for it on 4th down, which is really being pushed by the XFL. There's a chart that I don't know if the XFL came up with, trying to show when you should go for it or not. We'll take a look at that as well. And then, of course, close out with our Game 1 preview. First game for the Vipers up at MetLife Stadium playing against the New York Guardians. Should be a great game for that. But before we do, quick reminder, of course, you can always watch us like you are right now. If you're on YouTube, watch our live shows or our pre-recorded shows, kind of our blog series. Same audio is going to be available on your favorite podcasting platforms. Apple Podcasts, you can find us real easy. Google Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Make sure you're looking for us on your favorite podcasting platforms. Give us a subscription, give her a subscribe, a like, leave a review. Good or bad, we will take the good with the bad and any feedback you're able to give back. And here we go with episode 3 of the Viper's Nest. Let's start with XFL news and updates. Really one of the big news stories other than the big kickoff weekend is the XFL revealed a 9th team. And I think this is a really interesting concept. They're calling it, I don't know if it's Team 9 or Team of 9. I think it's Team 9. And I really like this concept. Essentially, it's the practice squad of the entire XFL. But I think what's really interesting, I guess the NFL kind of draws on this concept being that you can sign people off of any other player's practice squad. But you have basically a team that's going to be practicing together, a team of 40 of key positions, most positions available. So they'll be treating themselves as a 9th team. They're not going to be playing in any games, of course. But basically anyone's going to be ready. I think the rule is weeks 1 and 2, should an injury occur, or you want to make a roster change, you're able to pick up everyone that either you cut during the preseason, or if you wanted to bring someone new in, totally new, let's say Antonio Brown, all of a sudden became available, you could bring him in. My understanding is from weeks 3 to 10, and then the playoffs, the respective division championships and the final, you can only pull from team 9 in order to fill up your roster, which I think is really interesting. Kind of gives extra hope to those who got cut. So again, the team 9 concept being introduced, really a big practice squad and a big pool of players available to anyone should injury occur, either now or definitely after week 2. So week 3 and beyond, you got to pull from team 9 to fill your roster. So I think that kind of gives hope to a few players. A few injuries happening early this game, week 1, day 1 of games as well. So I think again, giving teams or players that were able to stick it out an opportunity to continue to stick it out and have a chance to get moved up to the big game squad. So that was really most of the big news happening from an organization level. A couple injuries here and there. We talked in episode 2 about the key injuries for the Vipers affecting them, mainly at wide receiver, which is, as we saw in day 1, a very, very important position. Though I got to give it to the Wildcats, a little bit of power running from them. I'm hoping that if they're able to get better quarterback play, they could potentially be a powerhouse. But they're able to run really well, and we'll talk about their roster and who kind of contributed to their running game. But really, I wanted to go over big 3 points of what I loved about my first XFL experience, at least on TV. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make it to a game this year. It'd be nice maybe to drop down to either Houston or up to Dallas to catch a game this year. Not sure if it's going to happen. But I'm already really impressed by the product. And I know we've been saying it since episode 1 of the podcast. We've been impressed with the rollout. Social media has been great. Love the concept of having preseason camp all together and scrimmages, and it's almost like an extended media day for the XFL, with all the teams being together for preseason and everything like that. And that really was my big takeaway, is media coverage was excellent. And I don't know what that says about the coverage package that was given to the AAF and whether that was instrumental in its demise. I don't know. Maybe it's just because Vince McMahon has deeper pockets than whoever funded the AAF initially, and then was taking loans from like the NHL to continue playing and being able to pay players through week 8. But the presentation was professional. You had Steve Levy, you had Kurt Menefee, you had Brock Heward on the field. These are familiar names and faces of the broadcast teams we love for NFL coverage, and here they were doing XFL. And I got to give it to, whether the NFL supports it or not, XFL advertising on Fox and on ESPN during the championship weekend. Of course, the NFC. I remember seeing the NFC Championship game, seeing an ad for the XFL. I was like, wow, that was pretty bold strategy there, Cotton. So it's great that we're embracing this idea of, wow, maybe we get a free 12 more weeks of football. I'll take that, right? 12 more weeks to make the period a little bit shorter until we get to NFL training camp. Media coverage, again, big thumbs up. The camera angles were amazing. Right there on the field for the kickoff, which I really loved. And that's another thing we can talk about maybe more in depth in our next episode, especially kind of summarizing the Vipers' performances. Kickoff, I think that was the big question. What was that going to look like? Definitely some back and forth online on whether are we taking away the excitement of the kickoff. I think it was really interesting that there was incentive to keep it not within the bounds of play, not kicking. I'm sure the kickers they have there could have kicked touchbacks all day, But touchbacks, I think, we're starting at the 35. And I'd be curious to see what the average starting position was. There were a few big returns, but to the credit of a few of the online community, was it more exciting? No. I think because basically the defenders are seeing where the ball is and everyone's going towards the point of attack, right? So it's really up to the blocking schemes to come up with something interesting, or we haven't seen a reverse yet, so maybe there's an opportunity for some trickeration on the kickoff returns. I'm sure we'll see plenty more as teams adjust and we get to collect more data and really see more film on how the kickoff goes. But media coverage, thumbs up. ESPN and Fox doing both a great job. And it was just, again, I know I've used the word professional, but just the backstories on players, being able to talk about their time in the NFL, talking about their performance in the AAF in college. It was almost like watching a game. And the graphics package as well, just loved it. Every time someone scored a touchdown, their name and touchdown was on there. Again, absolutely professional and great presentation. Just a different tone from what I felt CBS was presenting us with the AAF. So big thumbs up there. Point number 2, and I think it was maybe one of the biggest concerns, was were we going to get good football? And if I know we don't want to judge day one and we're going to say, oh, this is going to be the best football we've ever seen, but there was some damn good football in both games, Defenders, Dragons, and the game I was able to watch mostly, Wildcats at the Roughnecks. Damn good football, damn good plays. You had toe drags in the end zone. You had the offensive linemen catching footballs. You had sacks. You had defensive pressure. You had some amazing grabs and some power running. The Wildcats, even though they got pretty much thoroughly dominated by the defense, they were able to kind of have a little bit of a running game, which was impressive. But again, this did not look like AAF. I mean, there were times where maybe early on, I know for sure the Roughnecks had a case of the drops, and even the Wildcats as well, just kind of dropping balls in their right in their hands in the breadbasket. Some drops there, a couple muffed punts and a couple muffed kickoffs, or at least fumbles on kickoffs that were pretty key in the game, and at least led to Houston's ultimate domination of the Wildcats, for instance. So I think a few things to clean up there in terms of turnover management and ball control, but all in all, I was thoroughly impressed with the quality of play. I mean, it's clearly not the NFL, but there were some names that you recognize on there. I think the third point I want to drive home before we move on to the XFL West rosters in depth really was the officiating. I felt was a star, and I'm not saying that in a sarcastic way of, oh, here we go, it's hard to beat the Packers and the refs, or it's hard, the refs really stole the game. The officiating actually was inobtrusive, but also intriguing. And what I mean by that is that you had perfect transparency. The officiating was efficient. They came on, they told you what was going on. First down, second down, here's the penalty. We have some referees in the NFL that kind of get their own reputation and name, and we know them and we know their tendencies, and they're kind of the star of the show. Ed Hockley, Jack Ref, and a few others. Kerry Foster back in the day, kind of becoming sub-celebrities, being NFL referees here. Maybe over time we'll get to that, but I feel that the crews work together. Loved the ball spotting referee with the red hat. Balls right on the ground, very efficient. I don't know if we reached the goal of speeding up the game, because I think both games were in the 3-hour range anyway. I know they were trying to be sub 3 hours, but they took their time to make the calls correctly, and I love the transparency into the review. One of the big plays in question was a tough hit in the end zone, whether it was targeting or leading with the crown of the helmet, which would have been a pretty significant foul. They took the time to get it right, look at the point of contact and the intention and no launch, because initially it was going to be called, and they decided ultimately not to call it with shoulder on helmet contact for the most part, Wildcats and Roughnecks game. I think it was a play maybe in the third quarter or so. Really big hit. And honestly, letting them play, I mean, maybe we got fortunate. There wasn't super obvious pass PI all the time, but anything that was borderline, I mean, they were letting them play, and you really like that. Like that, the pass interference is not reviewable actually, because they were calling it consistent. It was, you got a little bit of hand play, you got a little bit of arm grabbing, but anything that crossed the line that seemed to be pretty consistent in both games, that was being flagged. So, I thumbs up for the officiating so far. We'll see what happens. Officiating always finds a way to kind of go downhill, but we'll keep an eye on that. So 3 big stars in day one media coverage. Really some good football, and then of course the officiating. I would say number 3 star. Really impressed by that. So let's get over to the XFL West rosters and offensive depth charts. Because the defense kind of takes second fiddle here in the league, and believe me, during the broadcast, I will let you know this is offensive-oriented league. A lot of the rules trying to spur on offense and are offensive-friendly. When we get time later in the, maybe in the next couple episodes, we'll take a closer look at defense and who's really making a difference. Houston Roughnecks defense, I think, right now is in the early lead for dominating performance of the week and could be the most dominant defense. I think the idea of a dominant defense is going to be a little bit different. I think they're going to be giving up more points than we're used to in the NFL, for instance. But Houston putting on a display, and again, we'll get more into that in our next show, episode 4, as we recap week 1 in the XFL more in depth. But let's look at those rosters. And if you're watching with us live on YouTube, you'll be able to see it on your screen. And I'll try my best to read to our podcast listeners of what's going on. But again, just presenting the offensive rosters, courtesy of Rotoballer. Not sure if I'm ready to get into the fantasy XFL game. Maybe next season. Collecting my data first, right? But lots of good work going on. I use Rotoballer for fantasy football prep, and they did a great job at kind of analyzing who are going to be your best fantasy picks if you're doing an XFL fantasy football league. So let's take a look at Seattle. Seattle, really the unanimous kind of probably the team everyone's picking not to do the best this year in the league. I think their over-under was 4 wins, and they had some bright spots. We'll give them that. They had some bright spots in the game, but more, it just really looks like they're going to struggle this year. When you have a choice of Brandon Silvers, which I don't know too much about, and BJ Daniels, who had a storied career here in the state of Florida, may not be having a good time. Brandon Flowers actually had moments of brilliance. I think he ended up getting hurt. I think BJ Daniels might have snuck in the game towards the end. I wasn't able to watch, but really, the star, as you'll see here, you got your depth chart of Brandon Silvers and BJ Daniels right behind him. The Dragons only going with 2 QBs. Jaquan Gardner, Kenneth Farrow, and Trey Williams, really a 3-headed monster at running back for Seattle. You did see all 3 during the game. So they're really going running back by committee in Seattle. And who really stole the show for them this afternoon, son of rookie Proehl, Austin Proehl, scoring 2 touchdowns, the first touchdown in XFL history, going to Austin Proehl, and he got another one after that. So that's the scoop on the Seattle offense. I'm hoping they can sneak a couple wins together. I think 4's on the high end. I don't want to sound like an expert. I'm an expert after one day or anything, but I think they definitely are challenged in terms of talent. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see if injuries kind of equalize stuff, if they make any moves, especially with some options in the team of 40, or excuse me, Team 9, the 40 players that comprise Team 9. Maybe they'll swap some players in and out with that. But overall, good performance by Austin Proehl, and a little bit of a running game going against the defenders. Dallas Renegades. I guess that's the closest team, or Houston, I guess, is the closest team to me here in Austin, Texas. No surprise, Landry Jones. The only surprise, however, is there's rumors of an injury. So it could be Philip Nelson starting for him, being backed up by Eric Dungy out of Syracuse, who I got to see a couple times when they played Notre Dame. Decent quarterback. Definitely not really, no really NFL prospects or anything, but could be a serviceable backup here in the XFL. But really, Landry Jones would have been really good for Dallas to have, and even if he's not ready for Game 1, Philip Nelson should be able to fill in quite nicely. You kind of saw that with the Wildcats today, with their backup quarterback, filling in for Josh Johnson. No surprise that Artis Payne is your starting running back, though we expect to see a little bit of a committee with Marquis Young. In terms of wide receiver, Jazz Ferguson experienced an injury, so he dropped on the depth chart. Really the big news, number one, where'd you go? Yeah, Nigel Flynn. Flynn Nagel is their number one receiver, and they should get some production as well from the tight end position with Sean Price is what the expectation is. They're Dallas favored to win the championship. Really interesting. We'll see if they end up meeting the Vipers, who are, I think, number 2 on the odds. Looking forward to a Dallas-Tampa championship game. That'd be nice. Maybe if it's in Dallas, I might have to make the trip up there. So again, a couple big names on the depth chart, the offensive depth chart for the Renegades. Definitely got to keep an eye on that running game, and if Landry Jones is able to make that start. For the Wildcats, who we got to see in action, big news, of course, Josh Johnson being number 1 on their depth chart. That coming to a little bit of a change having to be made. Sustained an injury during training camp. May not be able to go week 1, or didn't go for week 1. May not be able to go for week 2. And, we're kind of thinking that maybe that he wasn't needed, being that he's played on, just basically the definition of a journeyman quarterback other than Ryan Fitzpatrick in the NFL, getting a shot here, getting a shot there, and hopefully was going to break through here with the LA Wildcats. Wasn't meant to be in week 1 at least. With Kedoff coming in to play most, if not all, the game for the LA Wildcats, and honestly was impressive in the first half, but that Houston defense really turned it up in the second half. Incessant pressure and really kind of ended up collapsing. Running game couldn't. Once they were able to control the line of scrimmage, the running game kind of subsided, and really forcing Canoff to make plays that he just couldn't. Elijah Hood had a great day rushing. He had an amazing hurdle. First, I think we had the first XFL hurdle as well. Got to look that one up online. If you haven't seen it, just absolutely totally hurdling LeGarrette Blount style over a Houston defensive tackler. Jordan Smallwood, Adonis Jennings, Nelson Spruce, really the big names that on the wide receiving core. They went 4 wide a lot, and then we talked about that in episode 2. Most defenses are going to be playing base nickel, a little bit of dime packets, maybe a 3-3-5. We saw a little bit as well. I know I had something else to say about. We saw a little bit of Barnes action, yeah. Was it Spruce? Spruce was having a hard time. I forget if it was Spruce or Blacknall. I want to say it was Spruce. Was really having a bad time fielding kickoffs and punts. Muffed a couple, and kickoff as well. A little bit of difficulty returning and being able to make those catches. So LA, I think, has a decent core. I'm curious to see what Josh Johnson can do once he gets back, and if he can provide that spark, especially being a little bit more mobile. Canoff definitely struggled when Houston was getting pressure on him. Definitely, my guess is less mobile than Josh Johnson, despite Josh Johnson's age and a little bit of mileage on those tires. Then, of course, those Houston Roughnecks, they looked great against the Wildcats. I remember one of my first One of my early tweets was PJ Walker not playing well, and then of course he blows up to have 4 touchdowns. So you're welcome, PJ Walker. Make sure to give me a shout out for doing the reverse curse or the reverse jinx. This was a surprise, him winning the position over Connor Cook. Kind of an interesting decision by June Jones. Then again, really a name we heard a lot. Sammy Coates, Sam Mobley might have had 2 touchdowns, but Sammy Coates was absolutely wrecking and burning some of the Wildcats' defensive backs. PJ was struggling early to make those connections, but ultimately was able to drop some bombs. Sammy Coates being involved, and I want to say I saw Khalil Lewis in the action as well. So Houston, I think, is pretty strong on offense, and their defense looked really, really, really good. We'll see how it shakes out as the week goes on, as the weeks go on, and if they're going to play a strong team like Dallas, to see how well they match up. Excuse me, sorry about that. Kind of late here. Stayed up late watching the John Jones fight. Cashing in on a parlay. Of course, don't forget to follow me at the Sports Moose. You'll see my Twitter handle as I switch back over to screen on mine. But if you're listening to us on Apple, at Moose, MOOSE _TSH for the Sports Heap. That's where you'll find me on Twitter, and I usually put my picks on there at a 4-way parlay for UFC 247. We'll recap that at our next episode of $10 Sports coming up this week. So as we transition into, and this should be kind of a quick conversation, but I found a few charts that were really interesting. And again, if you're listening to the podcast, I'll try my best to describe these in depth. Kind of is data and analytics making its way into the XFL. And I really think it's interesting finding a few of these charts. There's already an extra point conversion decision analysis tool. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see both of them up here. If not, I'll try to describe this for our podcast listeners. Basically, over the entire 60-minute game, they have a margin. They have 0 at the middle. And basically, if it's 0-0 or if you're tied, you should always go for 2 unless there's 6 minutes left in the game. Then you should just be conservative and go for 1, which I thought was interesting. You should never go for 3 if you're always in the lead. So if you're leading by 1, you go for 2 about 80% of the time. And then that increases exponentially as you're up by more. You should be going for 1, apparently, per this chart. Really don't see 3-point conversion attempts unless your deficit is 3. So you try and go for the tie. And they only recommend that, honestly, in the 4th quarter and beyond. And if your point margin is 4, 5, 6 or more, you should be going for 3, apparently. It doesn't matter what time of the game there is, which is kind of weird, especially if you're able to. You still have about 45 minutes left in the game. They're recommending you go for 3 if your margin is 6 or less. So that's really interesting. Not sure if we saw that in the game. I think we saw a lot of typical NFL management. I think we saw a little bit more of the 2-point conversion attempts, especially in the second game. But the game was played pretty close to a standard NFL game. And I know we expressed some concerns last week regarding punting and how punting may have been taken out of the game, or at least disincentivized by the major touchback rule. We didn't really see that, so I don't know if the punters just did a good job at putting the ball where they were forcing returns, not trying to coffin corner some of our players, the other team. So then they have one specific here for the last 10 minutes of the game. So the last, 2/3 of the last quarter. Basically, if your point margin is 0 for 10 minutes, 10, 9, 8, or 7, you go for 2. Then the rest of the time you go for 1. And And then, of course, if you're at the lead at any point, you're going for 1. You're going for 3 if you're down 3 or more getting into the last 10 minutes of the game. And down 2 or more about 80% of the time. That's the only time you should be going for 3. So we haven't had a 3-point attempt yet, I want to say. So I'm wondering if we're going to get to see one in Sunday's games. Vipers and Guardians. I think the Battlehawks are playing the Renegades. The last chart I wanted to show is the 4th down decision analysis. And this is really interesting because the rules, again, really are trying, and a lot of the media push is really trying to make sure that teams go for it on 4th down. And this chart's a little ridiculous here. It's from your own. Essentially, they've divided the field up here, so it's 4th down and between 1 and 3. Basically, it says go for it. If it's 4th and 3 or less, you always go for it. Doesn't matter where you are at the field, which is crazy to me. Fourth down at your own 1. Not sure if I like that, or at least within your own 10. I think it recommends going for it if it's 4th and 3rd or fewer, and that then expands. So if it's 4th and 10, and if you're anywhere between basically the 50 and your opponent's 38, because of the major touchback rule, you basically should just go for it all the time. It's because odds are, if you're not able to perfectly place a punt, your team's gonna be starting at the 35 anyway. And I like the logic there a little bit. Not sure if I like the logic of, if you're inside your opponent's 13, basically if it's 4th and 5 or shorter, recommending going for it versus kicking a field goal, which, if you're a conservative or old school NFL guy, you're always yelling, take the points at the TV, right? I think a lot of the rules here, it's really trying to push for going for it. How exciting is it on 4th down to really get that conversion or that touchdown? So, again, a really big wedge here saying go for it. I'd probably have to count out the squares. At least 50% of the chart, maybe 40% of the situations calling for going for it. 20 for punting and 20 for field goal. So you got 40. So it's going to be 30 and 30. So 30% of your situations you punt, 30% you kick a field goal, and then 40% of the time you should be going for it on 4th and down, 4th and whatever yards apparently. So I really thought this was interesting, and just anecdotally from what we've seen so far, didn't really see this come into play too much. I think a lot of NFL guys in the room in terms of coaching, and this is really what you saw, is coaching this like an NFL game, strategic punting. There wasn't really too much going for it unexpectedly on 4th down. So we'll see how this goes the rest of the year. Maybe it gets more exciting. Maybe the powers that will the game kind of suggest that maybe kind of start coaxing you to go for it on 4th down. So finally, our week 1 preview: Vipers at the New York Guardians. Really excited for this game, especially seeing the action today. I mean, I think mentally trying to psych yourself up for what ultimately is going to be minor league football to a degree. It's a little tough, I'm always excited to support our Tampa teams, and I'm waiting for my Viper shirt to get in so I can sport that during the Viper's Nest at least. But I was a little struggling, like, oh man, here, excited to have Aaron Murray and a couple other local prospects, and watch people who love the game play the game that they love, maybe not at the NFL level, but really, again, kind of to our 3 stars of the day so far, right? The officiating, media coverage, and the actual ability of football being played, or the quality of football being played. I'm really kind of like renewed my excitement, and I'm really excited to watch this game tomorrow. I think they're going to be on Fox, the Vipers and the Guardians. Really, the big matchup is in the QB spot, Aaron Murray versus Matt McGloin. Of course, McGloin of PSU fame, Penn State. First walk-on quarterback since like 1947 or 49 on Penn State's campus. So probably since Joe Pa's first season as coach or something like that. Really coming on and did pretty well. It was really part of the resurgence of the Penn State University Nittany Lion resurgence after basically getting the death penalty with a lot of the abuse scandals going on. I'm liking McGloin. He spent some time in the NFL, of course, with the Raiders and bounced here and there. Aaron Murray didn't really impress in the AAF, which I think was some of the concerns. We always love our homegrown talent, and of course, we talked about ties to Plant Football and Coach Weiner and really being from the Tampa area, and I like that there's a lot of local players being drafted to their local teams, but this is an area of concern, and I'm not saying that Matt McGloin's going to light the light on fire, or the league on fire or anything, but he's played significant time in the NFL and was able to learn as a backup. Maybe doesn't have the talent to stay in the NFL full time, not even as a backup now, with some of that talent definitely jumping up in skill. But I think this could be an area where it just really exposes the Vipers' defense. We expressed some concerns last week in terms of depth at linebacker. I know we'll be playing nickel, have a little bit of expertise in the defensive back, which we definitely saw how important that was. Some of the Wildcat defenders getting torched over and over by just faster receivers. So it's going to be really important to have a strong secondary. So we'll see how Matt McGloin connects with their number one guy is Mikhail McKay, former Commanders wide receiver of the AAF, probably one of the best receivers coming out of the AAF. Again, spending some time with the Commanders, graduating from Cincinnati, a Bearcat out of that program. Saw Joe Horde Jr. made that team, listed 4th to 5th on the depth chart, so may not see too much of the field. Might have an impact on special teams. Again, we're really excited about Devion Smith at running back for the Vipers. Reese Horn is a name that's been popping up as a value pick for fantasy and really kind of a under-the-radar pick or a performer and wide receiver for the Vipers. I'd be curious to see how we get him into the game. I know a lot of the initial excitement for Nick Truesdale, and I buy that. I think he's a big athletic tight end. Going to be flopping at that tight end 1, tight end 2 spot. But I'm really liking Jalen Tolliver, Reese Horn to get some action at wide receiver. Talked about how serviceable Devion Smith was. Good performer at Michigan, as long as it doesn't have to be the feature back, which I think the Vipers are doing, running a little bit of a stable of a running back situation. Quentin Flowers as kind of your designated trick play guy, listed 3rd or 4th on the QB depth chart. Not appearing on the running back depth chart, but he can play running back, so maybe a little bit of wildcat formation, some trick plays for the Vipers. And again, Devion Smith spending some time with the Apollos of the AAF over in Orlando. Some other power positions, Tim Cook, spent some time with the Hot Shots. I think the Vipers have the advantage in terms of running back when you're looking at Tim Cook versus Devion Smith. But we talked a little bit about the offensive line. There's a lot of just unknown and unproven talent on the offensive line. Want to see how they gel as a unit. There's some big boys on the LA Wildcats. I think there was a guy named Storm Norman, if I heard correctly. This is good old Stormin' Norman, one of the tackles for the LA Wildcats. Don't quote me. Sorry if that's not your real name, but I could have sworn the broadcast said Storm Norman, and that really caught me off guard, maybe chuckle a little bit. So that's kind of your offensive breakdown for the game tomorrow. Again, we're really excited to finally have those Vipers in action. It's an offensive league. We've got the Aaron Murray interception counter right above us, replacing Jameis Winston. We've got a big fat goose egg. Let's keep it there, Aaron. Let's keep it at 0. We don't want to be counting those INTs like we were for Jameis Winston. Game, I think, is 2 o'clock Eastern on Fox up at MetLife Stadium, which I think is interesting. And as we close and reflect and getting ready for game number 1, I'm really curious how the market's going to react in Tampa, especially first home games not till week 3. Lots of stuff sold out off online, though. I'm hoping that's just a reflection of everyone buying Viper stuff and getting ready for the season, because I was a little late to snag a few items online, so hopefully that's a great indication that the city's excited. Curious to see how things go in an NFL stadium, especially in Tampa. Our sports fanness, and I love my hometown, can be fickle sometimes. It can be a little fickle. So I'm hoping to see a good representation there in Raymond James Stadium. I think a few of the other venues are very fortunate that they have soccer-specific stadiums that I think funnel in the crowd a little bit better. Audi Field looked great. It's like a perfect size for the XFL. And even University of Houston Stadium over for the Roughnecks, kind of limiting access to the third floor and second levels. Lower bowl looked pretty much completely full. So kudos to the teams there and really those stadiums. Curious to see what the first Seattle Dragons game looks like. Those fans. Seattle's like the craziest city. I mean, props if you're a Seattle listener out there. Love your city. Love your fandom to each and any sport that's in your city. Thumbs up to that. So hopefully you support those Dragons as well. Where is everyone else playing? I know the Renegades are playing. They're playing in the old Globe Life Stadium, so the old Ranger Stadium, as the Rangers move into a new stadium next door over there at Texas Live or Rangers Live, whatever they're calling that kind of entertainment area by Arlington and the Cowboys Stadium. So not shy there, playing next door to Jerry World. What other stadiums do we have? I forget where St. Louis is playing. Are they playing in the TWA Dome or the old Irvin Jones Dome? We'll have to look up where the Battlehawks are playing. I know LA is playing in the Charger Stadium or the LA Galaxy Stadium, which is, I think, an appropriate size, and hopefully they can fill that up with their third NFL team in the LA area, or a third football team in the LA area. That has been it for episode 3 of the Viper's Nest. Hope you enjoyed. Late night edition. Me talking at you for a little bit. Hopefully we'll have Imrod back to get his insight next week as we recap the Vipers against the Guardians and then get you ready for week 2 of the XFL season. Might get some picks in there too. I think I'm going to give it a couple weeks to gather some data on the over-unders and the point spreads. I love that the broadcast talked about point spreads and even showed the point spreads and the over-under for the game on the actual graphics. So thumbs up Fox, thumbs up ABC and ESPN for showing the spreads on those games. So hopefully we'll get some $10 sports action, or we'll drop our picks during the next couple episodes of Vipers. And that's been it for us here at the Sports Heap. It's been the Sports Moose here for you. Thank you so much. Make sure you're subscribing on YouTube. Give this video a like if you're watching us. If you're on our favorite podcasting platforms, make sure to give us a subscription. Drop us a comment, a review, 5 stars, 1 star, whatever number of stars, we will take it. Make sure to find all our shows. Viper's Nest, $10 Sports, our sports gambling podcast. Bucking Hangovers on layaway for now until stuff gets getting busy with Jameis Winston news, or Shaq Barrett news, or draft news. Thunderdome Podcast got 2 episodes coming at you this upcoming week. Bolts on a 6-game winning streak, so we're excited to keep monitoring that. And of course, the Viper's Nest here. And our live shows on YouTube, Balls, Brews, and Bros, your chance to interact with us as we talk every month or so about the biggest topics in sports and the biggest topics in TV and kind of off topic as well. It's been Moose. Have a great night. Go Vipers, beat those Guardians. We'll see you later next week for episode 4 and the recap. Take care.